Yes, I know, the topic of Altaic languages is controversial. It has its supporters and critics. But in this video, I want to set that controversy aside and take a more neutral approach. Regardless of your stance on this topic, I invite you to join me on a journey of over an hour to explore some of Asia's oldest languages. Let's start with a quick quiz. Could Turkish, Mongolian and Manchu, the language that adorns China's Forbidden City, actually be related? Now I will give you some facts and you can guess the language. This language emerged in Central Asia. It has no grammatical genders and follows a SOV subject-object-verb-word order. It lacks complex consonant clusters, meaning that consonants are often separated by vowels, giving the language a more open sound. It is highly agglutinative, meaning words are formed by attaching suffixes to a root, with each suffix adding specific meanings or grammatical functions resulting in long, complex words. The pronouns for I and U start with the letters B and S respectively. It also has vowel harmony, so the vowels and suffixes adjust to match the vowels in the root word. It doesn't have a separate word for to have. Instead, possession is expressed with constructions involving to be or with possessive suffixes or nouns. If you guessed Turkish, you're right. If you guessed Mongolian, you're also right. And if you guessed Manchu, you're right again. So how can these languages share such striking similarities? Because Turkish belongs to the Turkic language family, Mongolian to the Mongolic family, and Manchu to the Tungusic family. The Altaic language theory suggests that Turkic, Mongolic, and Tungusic languages may share a common ancestry, possibly originating from an ancient Proto-Altaic language. At times, the theory has even extended to include the Koreanic and Japonic families, although these additions are more controversial. Micro-Altaic refers to the inclusion of just the Turkic, Mongolic, and Tungusic families, while Macro-Altaic adds the Japonic and Koreanic families to the mix. Some linguists have even proposed including the Ainu language, though this idea is typically rejected, even by strong supporters of the Altaic theory. The idea of an Altaic language family has gone through many stages of development and debate, fluctuating in acceptance and facing significant challenges over the centuries. The concept originated in the 18th and 19th centuries as comparative linguistics was emerging as a field. The term Altaic itself was coined in the early 19th century by linguist Matthias Castrén, who suggested these languages might share a common ancestry, naming the family after the Altai Mountains between modern-day Mongolia, Russia, Kazakhstan, and China. Castrén and other early proponents saw this region as the birthplace of the proposed Proto-Altaic language. Besides the linguistic context, Altaic has also been used to collectively describe the Turkic, Mongolic, and Tungusic peoples. Today, the Altaic language theory is largely dismissed as a genetic hypothesis. The prevailing view is that the languages grouped under Altaic form more of a Sprachbund or linguistic area where futures converge through long-term contact rather than shared ancestry. Scholars mainly treat Turkic, Mongolic, and Tungusic as separate language families with similarities due to historical interaction. Over the centuries, Turkic, Mongolic, and Tungusic peoples led similar lifestyles, followed nearly identical religious, economic, and cultural practices. They frequently interacted, sometimes fighting, sometimes uniting against common enemies, sometimes intermarrying, and sometimes trading. As a result, it is only natural to see shared vocabulary, structural closeness, and grammatical similarities among these languages. Regardless of one's stance on the Altaic theory, these languages continue to hold great cultural and historical importance. What fascinates me about them is that collectively they are spoken across a vast area. The Turkic family with 37 languages is by far the most widely spoken Altaic branch, boasting over 200 million speakers from Greece to eastern China. Next is the Mongolic branch with 11 languages and around 8 million speakers, concentrated in a much smaller area. Finally, we have the Tungusic branch, also with 11 languages, but with just 75,000 speakers. Despite the low number of speakers, Tungusic languages are spoken across a region larger than mainland Europe. As a Turk who speaks Turkish as a native language, the possibility that my ancestral language shares a common origin with Mongolic, Tungusic, Koreanic, and Japonic languages excites me. Even though this theory is now largely discredited, the linguistic similarities shared with these groups remain fascinating. I'm not a linguist, so I wouldn't want to make a definitive statement on this theory. However, personally, I do feel a sense of connection with the ethnic groups and languages included in the Altaic theory. Alright, now that I've shared my unsolicited perspective, it is time to explore all 63 languages under the proposed Altaic family. We'll start with the Micro-Altaic grouping, then take a peek into the Macro-Altaic world. I've put my heart and soul into this video, so if you enjoy the content, please consider supporting me by leaving a like, subscribing and commenting. This will be a long video, so grab your tea or coffee and let's dive into the history of the languages of the Great Steppe. In this day and age, there are approximately 35 Turkic languages spoken by around 200 million people in a vast area. If you're wondering why there isn't a specific number of Turkic languages but approximately 35, it's because the distinction between a dialect and a language varies depending on who you ask. In this video, we will cover all of the Turkic languages, following an order from the most to least commonly spoken ones. Grab your coffee or tea, lean back, and let's dive into the Turkic world. Turkish, my native language, is the most widely spoken Turkic language worldwide. Primarily spoken by Turks, many other groups also use it as a native or secondary language. In addition to Turks, Turkish-speaking groups include all ethnic minorities in Turkey and Turkish diaspora or communities outside of Turkey. Minorities in Turkey include Kurds, Laz, Circassians, Jews, Armenians, Greeks, Albanians, Bulgarians, Zazas, and others. There are Turkish-speaking communities in Bulgaria, Greece, Macedonia, Kosovo, Moldova, Iraq, Syria, and Northern Cyprus. Additionally, the Turkish diaspora in countries such as Germany, France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Austria, Sweden, the UK, the US, Canada, and others widely speak Turkish. Out of the 7,000 languages spoken today across the globe, Turkish ranks 17th in the total number of speakers and continues to spread steadily. Now let's examine the language profile, a term I coined for this video. Turkish has used the Latin alphabet since 1928. Between 90 to 100 million people worldwide speak Turkish as either a native or secondary language. Turkish belongs to the Oghuz branch of the Turkic language family. Its status is safe, meaning it's not endangered. Uzbek is the most widely spoken Turkic language in Central Asia. It is primarily spoken by the Uzbek people, a Turkic group inhabiting Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan. Like many Turkic people and Turkic-speaking groups, it's not easy to give an exact number for the population. Therefore, we have to rely on data from different sources. The population of Uzbekistan is 36 million, 29 million of whom are ethnic Uzbeks who naturally speak Uzbek as a native language. The rest consists of minorities like the Tajiks, Kazakhs, Karakalpaks, Kyrgyz, Russians, and others who mostly speak Uzbek as a second language. Outside Uzbekistan, the highest Uzbek population can be found in Afghanistan, where 8 to 11% of the country's population consists of Uzbeks, which totals around 4 million people. In both Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, the Uzbek population is around 1 million. If we combine the Uzbeks in Kazakhstan, Russia, Turkmenistan, and Pakistan, we have an additional population of close to 2 million Uzbeks. Now let's take a look at the language profile of Uzbek. Today, the Latin script is officially used to write Uzbek. The total number of Uzbek speakers is between 35 to 45 million. It belongs to the Karluk branch of the Turkic languages. Due to its high number of speakers, it's categorized as safe. Azerbaijani is spoken by the Azerbaijani people and is the official language of Azerbaijan. However, the highest number of Azerbaijani speakers is not in Azerbaijan, but in Iran. The population of Azerbaijan is around 10 million, which corresponds to the number of Azerbaijani speakers in the country. In Iran, Azerbaijani people make up the largest ethnic group by far, with a population varying between 15 to 25 million people depending on the source. The Azerbaijanis in Iran primarily inhabit the northwest lands of the country, indicating that the Azerbaijanis are scattered homogeneously throughout this region. Azerbaijani is also spoken by the Azerbaijani minority in eastern Turkey, though there is no exact number for the population of Azerbaijani people in the country. According to the 2014 population census, there are around 230,000 Azerbaijanis living in southern Georgia, where they also speak Azerbaijani. Other prominent Azerbaijani groups can be found in Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Germany, and the US. Azerbaijani is officially written in the Latin script in Azerbaijan, but in Iran the Arabic script is mostly used. In total, there are between 25 to 35 million Azerbaijani speakers. This language belongs to the Oghuz branch of the Turkic language family and is documented as safe as it's widely spoken by millions. Uyghur is the fourth most spoken Turkic language. It is spoken by the Uyghur people, the most populous Turkic group without a country. Uyghur people predominantly inhabit the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region of Western China, whose population is around 11.7 million according to the 2020 population census. In addition, there are small pockets in the neighboring countries where the Uyghurs live. In Kazakhstan, there are around 200,000 Uyghurs, and in Turkey, the Uyghur population is around 50,000. Pakistan also has a high Uyghur population, which is close to 200,000. However, the common perception is that the Uyghurs in Pakistan are much more integrated into society and mostly speak Urdu. Therefore, it's not easy to get an accurate number about the Uyghur presence in this country. Today, Uyghurs are the second largest minority in China. Unfortunately, the Uyghur population in the country is living under extensive pressure by the Chinese government. Especially in the last few years, the assimilation policy aimed towards the Uyghurs is imposing severe restrictions on their religious, cultural, economic, and social lives. It is presumed that close to 1 million Uyghurs are currently being detained in labor camps in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. In these camps, officially called vocational education and training centers by the Chinese government, abominable horrors against the Uyghurs take place. In these camps, the detained Uyghurs are required to sing hymns praising the Chinese Communist Party and write self-criticism essays. Other camp policies include forced labor, suppression of Islamic religious practices, political indoctrination, severe ill treatment both physically and verbally, forced sterilization, forced abortion, prohibition of the Uyghur language, and separating minors from their families. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of Uyghur kids who are separated from their parents are put in boarding schools where they are obligated to adapt to the Chinese language, customs, and way of thinking, and forced to forget their Uyghurness. As a result, this has a serious negative impact on the Uyghur language passing on to younger generations. Uyghur is written in the Arabic script. Around 13 million people speak this language in total. It belongs to the Karluk branch of the Turkic languages. Although it has a high number of speakers due to the reasons I've mentioned earlier, the Uyghur language is classified as critically endangered, which is the last stage before a language dies. Kazakh is spoken by the Kazakh people, a Turkic group primarily inhabiting Kazakhstan. In addition, Kazakh is spoken in surrounding countries such as Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, Russia, and China. According to the 2021 census, Kazakhstan's population is 19.6 million, and 80% of the Kazakh nation is recorded to speak Kazakh as a native or second language. China is home to the largest Kazakh community outside of Kazakhstan, with more than 1.5 million Kazakhs. Uzbekistan has around 800,000, and Russia has around 500,000 Kazakhs. In Mongolia, the Kazakhs are the largest minority with around 100,000 people, making up close to the 3% of the country's population. Kazakh is currently written with Cyrillic letters, however the government has announced a transition process from Cyrillic to Latin script for the Kazakh language. As of May 2024, the deadline for this transition is 2025. The total number of Kazakh speakers across the world is around 19 million. Kazakh belongs to the Kypchak branch. Its status is vulnerable. Before we move on to the next language, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider leaving a like and comment and subscribing to this channel. Thank you. The Turkmen language is spoken by the Turkmen people. The Turkmens are among the most populous groups of Turkic people with a population of approximately 8 million. 4 million of Turkmens live in Turkmenistan. 1.7 to 2 million Turkmens live in the northeast of Iran on the border with Turkmenistan. In Afghanistan, between 2 to 3% of the population speaks Turkmen, which is around 1.2 million people. The third largest community of Turkmens outside of Turkmenistan is in Uzbekistan. In these small pockets on the southern borders of the country, Turkmen is spoken by a little more than 150,000 Turkmen people. Turkmen uses the Latin script today. In the past, like most of the Turkic languages that were spoken within the borders of the Soviet Union, Turkmen also used the Cyrillic script. Today, the Turkmen alphabet that is officially used was created by taking inspiration from the Turkish alphabet. The total number of Turkmen speakers in the world today is between 7 to 8 million people. Turkmen belongs to the Oghuz branch of the Turkic languages, which means that it is closer to Turkish and Azerbaijani. The status of Turkmen is vulnerable. Tatar is spoken by the Tatar people, who are the second largest ethnic group in Russia after the Russians. The Tatar population in Russia is approximately 4.7 million people. The Tatars primarily inhabit the Republic of Tatarstan in western Russia. In addition, they also live in the Republic of Bashkortostan, which is another republic in Russia that borders Tatarstan. Smaller Tatar groups are scattered across other regions of Russia, primarily Moscow. As you might surmise, these are the areas where Tatar is commonly spoken. Tatar officially uses the Cyrillic script, however the Latin alphabet is also used at times. The total number of Tatar speakers is between 5 to 6 million people, including the Tatars in Russia and other Tatars who live in small pockets in the surrounding countries. It belongs to the Kypchak language branch, meaning that it's closer to Turkic languages such as Kazakh and Kyrgyz. Kyrgyz is the official language of Kyrgyzstan. It is primarily spoken by the Kyrgyz people in Kyrgyzstan, but there are also groups of Kyrgyz speakers in Uzbekistan, China, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and Afghanistan. However, the Kyrgyz population in Afghanistan is a very small part of the population. It is estimated that around 1,000 Kyrgyz people live in the northeast mountains of the country. Unfortunately, I was not able to find any reliable data on what percentage of those 1,000 Kyrgyz people speak the Kyrgyz language. The Kyrgyz language that is spoken in Kyrgyzstan officially uses the Cyrillic script. However, in China and Afghanistan, the Arabic script is used to write this language. 4.5 million people speak Kyrgyz as a first or second language. Kyrgyz belongs to the Kypchak branch and its status is vulnerable. With 1.3 million speakers, Bashkir is the third most commonly spoken minority language in Russia after Tatar and Chechen. It is spoken by the Bashkir people, who, as you might imagine, also constitute the third largest minority group in Russia. Today, the Bashkirs primarily inhabit the Republic of Bashkortostan, which is one of the republics within the Russian Federation. Currently, there are a little more than 2 million Bashkirs in the world. 75% of the total Bashkir population lives in Russia, and the rest are scattered around the globe, mainly in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Bashkir uses the Cyrillic script. The total number of Bashkir speakers in the world is 1.3 million, so virtually all Bashkir speakers live in Russia. Bashkir belongs to the Kypchak branch of Turkic languages, so it is closer to Kazakh, Kyrgyz, and Tatar. The status of the Bashkir language is vulnerable. And we're continuing with language 10, the Chuvash language. Spoken by the Chuvash people who live in the Chuvash Republic of Western Russia, this language is the fifth most spoken language in the country with around 1.1 million speakers. Also, the Chuvash people are the fourth largest minority group in Russia. According to the 2021 census, the Chuvash population in Russia is 1.06 million, which is pretty close to the total number of Chuvash speakers. Unlike most of the Turkic groups in this region, the Chuvash are predominantly Orthodox. The Chuvash language has a very unique place among the Turkic languages. The Turkic language family branches look like this. We have Proto-Turkic, which is the starting point of all Turkic languages. Proto-Turkic is divided into two branches, Common Turkic and Oghur. All of the Turkic languages in this video, except for Chuvash, are under the Common Turkic branch. The Oghur Turkic branch comprises the extinct Turkic languages that were spoken in the past. The only language in the Oghur branch that is not extinct is Chuvash, so this language is not really closely related to any of the languages that we'll see in this video. And now let's see the language profile of Chuvash. This language uses the Cyrillic script. It is spoken by around 1.1 million people. As mentioned earlier, it belongs to the Oghur branch. The status of Chuvash is vulnerable. We're leaving Russia and heading south to Iran. Qashqai is the native language of the Qashqai Turks, who inhabit southwest Iran. The Qashqais are traditionally nomadic pastoralists. Although most of them lead a settled lifestyle today, the Qashqais still travel seasonally with their flocks. Today, the Qashqais represent such a significant part of modern-day nomadic culture that the car brand Nissan named its famous SUV Qashqai after them. The Perso-Arabic script is used to write Qashqai. The Qashqai population in Iran is presumed to be around 1 million, which is also the estimated number of Qashqai speakers. It belongs to the Oghuz branch, therefore shares many similarities with Azerbaijani and Turkish. The status of Qashqai is vulnerable. We continue with another Turkic language in Iran, Khorasani Turkic. This language is spoken by the Khorasani Turks, who reside in northeast Iran. Khorasani Turkic is a unique blend of Azerbaijani, Turkish, and Turkmen. Today, it is estimated that there are nearly 1 million Khorasani Turks in Iran. Khorasani Turkic is not widely written, thus it is primarily a spoken language. However, some individuals use the Perso-Arabic script to write this language. It is challenging to determine the exact number of Khorasani Turkic speakers. Out of approximately 1 million Khorasani Turks, it is presumed that between 400 to 800,000 people speak the Khorasani Turkic language. It belongs to the Oghuz branch. Khorasani Turkic is classified as vulnerable. The Karakalpak language is spoken by the Turkic group of Karakalpaks who are native to the Autonomous Republic of Karakalpakstan within the borders of Uzbekistan. Despite living in barren, inhospitable lands for decades, they managed to preserve their identity and create a beautiful culture. Today, the Karakalpaks are one of the poorest groups in Uzbekistan. The Karakalpak language uses the Latin script. The total population of the Karakalpaks is between 500 to 600,000, which also corresponds to the presumed number of Karakalpak speakers. It belongs to the Kipchak branch and its status is marked as vulnerable. Crimean Tatar is likely the most geographically dispersed Turkic language. It is spoken by the Crimean Tatar people who have endured many hardships in history and have had to immigrate several times to different places. Crimean Tatar should not be confused with the Tatar language that we covered a few minutes ago. Although these two belong to the same Turkic language branch, they are different languages. Today, the Crimean Tatar population is between 600 to 700,000. Groups of Crimean Tatars live quite far apart from each other. The largest group of Crimean Tatars is in Crimea with around 250,000 people. In addition, Uzbekistan has 150 to 200,000 Crimean Tatars. However, a small percentage of them speaks this language since the younger generations have mostly integrated into the Uzbek society. In central Turkey, there are around 100,000 Crimean Tatars, only a few thousand of whom are said to speak the Crimean Tatar language. Despite having relatively large diasporas across various continents, Crimea is considered to be the heart of the Crimean Tatar world. Due to the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 and the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, the future of the Crimean Tatars seem uncertain and bleak. Crimean Tatar uses the Latin script. It is estimated that this language is spoken by between 400 to 600,000 people in the world. Crimean Tatar belongs to the Kipchak branch and its status is severely endangered. The Kumyk language is spoken by the Kumyk people, a Turkic group inhabiting the northern Caucasus. After Azerbaijani Turkish, Kumyk is the second most widely spoken Turkic language in the region. Out of over 190 ethnic groups in Russia, the Kumyks have the 11th largest population with 565,000 people. There are also small groups of Kumyks in countries like Turkey, Uzbekistan and Ukraine. However, in total they add up to a few thousand people who are mostly assimilated and do not commonly speak the language. Since 1938, Kumyk has been using the Cyrillic script. According to the 2020 census, 400,000 people speak Kumyk in Russia, which is also roughly the total number of global speakers. Kumyk belongs to the Kipchak branch and its status is vulnerable. Yakut, also known as Saka, is the native language of the Yakut people, a Turkic group residing in remote Siberian lands of northern Russia. As of 2020, with a population of 478,000, the Yakuts are the 16th largest minority in Russia. Outside Russia, the Yakut population is measured in hundreds, which does not constitute a strong diaspora. Unlike many other large Turkic groups in Russia, the Yakuts do not follow Islam but Russian Orthodoxy and shamanism. Due to their remote location from the rest of the Turkic world, this language has been influenced by Mongolian and Russian. Today, Yakut is also used among other non-Turkic indigenous groups in the region such as Evenks, Evans and Yukagirs as a lingua franca alongside Russian. The Yakut language uses the Cyrillic script. Between 450 to 470,000 people speak Yakut in Russia. It belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch of the Turkic language family. Its status is vulnerable. Karachay-Balkar is a Turkic language spoken in the northern Caucasus region in two republics within Russia, the Republic of Karachay-Cherkessia and the Republic of Kabardino-Balkaria. Karachay-Balkar is spoken by two Turkic groups, the Karachays and the Balkars. These two groups share a similar heritage, culture and language. Therefore, the language they speak is seen as one. According to the 2020 census, the Karachay population in Russia is 226,000 and the Balkar population is 125,000. In addition to Russia, Turkey also has a significant Karachay population, which is around 20,000. However, outside these countries, there are no large Karachay communities. When it comes to the Balkars, it would be safe to say that pretty much all of the Balkar population in the world resides in Russia. Compared to the other Turkic languages we've covered so far, Karachay-Balkar does not have a strong literary tradition. This language uses the Cyrillic script. I would like to mention that this is the case for all of the Turkic languages in Russia, and except for the Crimean Tatar that is spoken in annexed Crimea, all of them use the Cyrillic script. The total number of Karachay-Balkar speakers is a little more than 274,000. It belongs to the Kipchak branch and its status is vulnerable. Spoken by the Tuvan people in the Republic of Tuva in southern Russia, the Tuvan language is one of the most widely spoken minority languages in the country. The Tuvans, indigenous to Siberia, are the 9th largest Turkic group in Russia. Historically, the Tuvans have been nomads, primarily engaged in animal husbandry and hunting. They are known for their seasonal migration between pastures and living in yurts, a lifestyle also seen among other Turkic people in the region. Almost all Tuvans live in Russia, with a population of 295,000. According to the 2020 census, around 2,300 Tuvans live in Mongolia. It is presumed that a few thousand Tuvans also reside in China. However, despite extensive research, I haven't been able to find any concrete data. The Tuvan language uses the Cyrillic script. In total, around 250,000 people speak Tuvan. It belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch. The status of Tuvan is vulnerable. Urum is perhaps the most interesting language in this video. However, it is not often seen in most Turkic language maps because some people consider it a dialect of Crimean Tatar, while others don't. Urum is spoken by the Urum people, who are Orthodox Greeks primarily residing in the city of Mariupol in Ukraine, or what remains of Mariupol due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. There is also a small Urum-speaking population in the city of Salka in Georgia. Before we move on, I would like to delve a little more into the origins of the Urums. The more common view, accepted by the world and Greek scholars, is that the Urums are descendants of the Greeks who immigrated to Ukraine many centuries ago. They believe that following the Mongol and Tatar invasions, a group of these Greeks adopted the Crimean Tatar language but preserved their Greek heritage. The view supported by Turkish scholars is that the Urums are a Turkic people, descendants of the Crimean Tatars, who adopted the religion and culture of the Greeks in this region, yet preserved their language. Over the years, Urum developed its own characteristics and diverged from mainstream Crimean Tatar. Therefore, today many sources regard Urum as a separate language. Regardless of their background, the Urum people are a unique cultural gem and deserve recognition. I was quite surprised to see that most sources and maps don't even mention this language. Urum uses the Cyrillic script. It is almost impossible to find an approximate range for the total number of Urum people and Urum speakers. The numbers presented on various internet sources vary greatly. The total number of Urum speakers is estimated to be between 3,000 to 180,000. It is presumed that in Ukraine there are around 40,000 Urums, around 3,000 of whom speak the Urum language. In Georgia, the Urum population is said to be a few thousand only. It is quite tricky to be honest, so for this language I would advise you to take all these numbers with a grain of salt. Sources differ on the branch to which Urum belongs. Some sources say Oğuz, some say Kipchak. Its status is definitely endangered. The Gagavuz language is the native tongue of the Gagavuz people, who are an Orthodox Turkic group primarily living in Moldova's autonomous region of Gagausia. According to 2014 census, there are 126,000 Gagavuz people in Moldova, which makes up 4.6% of the country's population. The Gagavuz people have a very strong national identity and heritage. 114,000 Gagavuz people speak their language in Moldova. In addition to Moldova, a few small pockets in Ukraine that are near the Moldovan border have a Gagavuz population around 30,000 people. However, it is assumed that a few thousand of them speak the Gagavuz language. Russia also has a Gagavuz community, whose number is a little more than 9,200, around 3,000 of whom speak Gagavuz. Turkey also has a Gagavuz population of 10,000 people, however they mostly consist of the Gagavuz people who came to the country to work or study. Gagavuz is written in Latin script. Total number of Gagavuz speakers is around 150,000. It belongs to the Oğuz branch, therefore shows many similarities with Turkish. The status of Gagavuz is definitely endangered. Siberian Tatar is spoken by the Siberian Tatar minority in Russia who reside in the country's central region. According to the 2021 census, there are approximately 7,000 Siberian Tatars in Russia. However, this figure may not accurately represent the Siberian Tatar population. Since many Siberian Tatars are reportedly documented as Tatars and Siberian Tatar speakers are recorded as Tatar speakers, we must speculate by considering various sources. It is estimated that the actual number of Siberian Tatars is close to 200,000. Siberian Tatar uses the Cyrillic script. Around 100,000 people speak this language. It belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch of the Turkic languages. Its status is definitely endangered. Let's leave the cold lands of Siberia and head south to Russia's warmer regions. The Nogai language is spoken by the Nogai people, a Turkic group who are the descendants of the Nogai horde. The Nogai horde was a confederation founded by several Mongol and Turkic tribes between the 15th and 17th centuries near the Caspian Sea. As a result, although the Nogais are a Turkic ethnic group, they also have Mongol roots to some extent. Today, almost all of the Nogai population resides in Russia. According to the 2021 census, there are around 110,000 Nogais in Russia. The Nogai language uses the Cyrillic script. Approximately 85,000 people in Russia speak the Nogai language. It belongs to the Kypchak branch and its status is severely endangered. Now we're taking a quick detour from Russia and heading west to Romania's Black Sea coast. Dobrojan Tatar, also known as Romanian Tatar, is spoken by the Tatar population of Romania. Some sources claim that Dobrojan Tatar is a dialect of Crimean Tatar, but others argue the opposite. To be honest, in this case, I went with my gut and decided to add it as a language to this video because more sources refer to Dobrojan Tatar as a separate language. Here, I would like to mention that the Turkish and Tatar populations of Romania should not be seen as one group. All Romanian censuses and academic sources document Turks and Tatars in Romania separately. Turkish is spoken by the Turks here in the southernmost part of Romania. However, Tatar is spoken a little further north. The population of Romanian Tatars is between 20,000 to 50,000. Dobrojan Tatar uses the Latin script. The total number of its speakers is around 20,000. This language belongs to the Kypchak branch. Its status is severely endangered. Spoken by the Salar people in central China, the Salar language is the fourth most popular Turkic language in China. According to the 2020 census, there are 165,000 Salar people in China, making them the fourth largest Turkic group in the country, following the Kyrgyz people. Today, the Salars are predominantly Muslims, and their main economic activities are farming and husbandry. Both their language and culture have significant Chinese and Tibetan influences. The Salar language does not have a strong written tradition today, so for most of the Salar people, it's a spoken language. However, a small percentage of them use the Latin script as well as the Chinese script. Between 60 to 70,000 people speak Salar in China. It belongs to the Oghuz branch, making it closely related to Turkish and Azerbaijani. The status of this language is vulnerable. Altai is spoken by the Altai Turks in the Altai Republic of Southern Russia. The Altai language has two dialects, Southern Altai and Northern Altai, which are not mutually intelligible. Due to the isolated location of their homeland, the Altai people have successfully preserved their culture, language, and religion against outside influences. Today, a significant population of the Altai people practice shamanism, Buddhism, and Tengrism. A small percentage follows Russian Orthodoxy. Islam never managed to find a place in Altai society. The Altai population in Russia were recorded as 83,000 in 2020. Since the Altai Republic is located at the crossroads of Russia, Kazakhstan, and Mongolia, there are small groups of Altai people in Kazakhstan and Mongolia as well. However, in total, this population is estimated to be only a few thousand. Altai is written in the Cyrillic script. It is spoken by between 50 to 60,000 people. Altai belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch. The status of this language is severely endangered. We're staying in the same region and going a little west from the Altai homeland. The Hakkas language is spoken by the Hakkas people, an indigenous Turkic group who mostly live in the Republic of Khakassia in southern Russia. The Hakkas population in Russia is approximately 61,000. There are also a few hundred Hakkas people in China and Ukraine. Just like the Altai people, the Hakkas people were never influenced by Islam. Today, a large percentage of the Hakkas community follow Russian Orthodoxy. There is also a smaller Hakkas population who practices shamanism. The Hakkas language is written in the Cyrillic script. Around 46,000 people speak this language. Hakkas is a part of the Siberian Turkic branch. The status of this language is definitely endangered. Halaj language is spoken by the Halaj people in the Markazi province of western Iran. Arguably, the Halaj people are the smallest Turkic group in Iran. Their population is presumed to be around 40,000 to 50,000. Due to their small population, the Halaj have been largely assimilated into the Iranian society, however they managed to protect their language until this day. The Halaj people are predominantly Muslims. They mostly engage with animal husbandry. Halaj is mostly a spoken language and does not have a strong literary tradition. However, when it's written, both Latin and Arabic scripts are used. It is estimated that no more than 20,000 people speak this language today. Halaj belongs to the Argu branch of the Turkic language family. Argu language branch has one surviving language only, and it's Halaj. In addition, this branch has the smallest number of speakers among all Turkic branches. The status of Halaj is vulnerable. I was unsure whether to include Ainu in this video, but let's do it. Ainu is a Turkic language spoken by the Ainu people in western China on the edge of the Taklamakan Desert. Before we continue, we need to clarify some mixed information about this language and the Ainu people. The origins of the Ainu people are disputed. Some argue that they're of Turkic origin, while others assert that they're of Iranic origin. However, the Turkic origin is more widely accepted. Today, they are not recognized as a separate group by the Chinese government and are counted as Uyghurs. Consequently, there is no solid data on the number of Ainu people. The estimated population of Ainu people in China ranges between 30 to 50,000. Almost all Ainus are trilingual, speaking Ainu, Uyghur, and Mandarin. Ainu is heavily influenced by Persian. This language has Turkic grammar, but predominantly Persian vocabulary. Some scholars view the Ainu language as a cryptolect. A cryptolect is a jargon or language of a group often used to exclude or mislead people outside the group. Some sources mention that the Ainu people speak this language when they wish to exclude outsiders and maintain secretive conversations. Today, Ainu uses the Arabic script. In total, around 6,000 people speak this language. It belongs to the Karluk branch of the Turkic languages. Its status is critically endangered. Western Uyghur is spoken by the Uyghur people in the Sunan Uyghur Autonomous County in China's Gansu province. Western Uyghur should not be confused with the Uyghur language, another Turkic language in China, nor should the Uyghur people be confused with the Uyghurs, another Turkic ethnic minority in China. According to the 2020 census, the Uyghur population in China is 14,300, making them one of the least populous minorities in the country. Western Uyghur has been isolated from the rest of the Turkic world for nearly 6 centuries. It serves almost as a border language between the other Turkic languages, Mandarin, Mongolian, and Tibetan. Although Western Uyghur has preserved several archaic features from Old Turkic, it has also been significantly influenced by Mandarin, Mongolian, and Tibetan. Today, the Uyghurs are primarily engaged in animal husbandry and farming. They predominantly follow Tibetan Buddhism. Western Uyghur uses the Latin script. Approximately 4,600 to 5,000 people speak this language. Western Uyghur belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch. Its status is severely endangered. Shor is spoken by the Shor people primarily in Russia's Kemerovo Oblast and the Republic of Khakassia. As of 2020, the Shor population is 10,500. The Shors have a unique background. Despite being considered among the Turkic people in Russia, the Shors emerged centuries ago as a result of the mixing of Turkic people with different groups in the region, such as the Kets, Samoyeds, and Ugrians. Today, a considerable number of the Shors follow Christianity, and some Shors follow Tengrism. The Shor language is an interesting amalgam of Turkic, Mongolian, and Russian. The region where the Shors historically lived was under Mongol rule for some periods during the medieval years. This resulted in Shor borrowing many words from the Mongolian language. Also, since the 19th century, Russian has greatly influenced Shor. Shor is written in the Cyrillic script. Around 2,900 people speak Shor. It belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch and is categorized as severely endangered. Dolgan is the northernmost spoken Turkic language. It is spoken in the central part of Russia by the Dolgan people, whose population was recorded as 8,157 in the 2020 census. For years, Dolgan was considered to be a dialect of Yakut, which we covered a few minutes ago. Despite having many similarities and common points with Yakut, Dolgan has had a lot of influence from Russian and Evenki, which is a Tungustic language spoken in the same region. This influence might explain why, in contemporary times, Dolgan is recognized as a separate language rather than a Yakut dialect. There are different opinions about the origins of the Dolgans, however, it is more commonly accepted that they are Turkic people. Until the Soviet era, the Dolgans followed a nomadic lifestyle. Just like many other indigenous peoples of Siberia, their livelihood consisted of reindeer husbandry, fishing, hunting, and fur farming. Dolgan is written in the Cyrillic script. Approximately 1,000 people speak this language. It belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch. The status of Dolgan is definitely endangered. Krimchak is spoken by the Krimchak people, a Jewish group primarily living in Israel and Crimea. There are around 2,000 Krimchaks in the world. Approximately 1,200 Krimchaks live in Israel, and 800 to 900 of them reside in Crimea. Although the Krimchak community is larger in Israel, the Krimchak language is not widely spoken by the Israeli Krimchak people. Most Krimchak speakers are in Crimea. Presumably, this Jewish group lived alongside the Crimean Tatars for centuries and ended up adopting their Turkic speech. Some sources regard Krimchak as a dialect of Crimean Tatar, however, the more commonly accepted view asserts that it began as a Crimean Tatar dialect and then developed into a separate language. The Krimchak language uses the Cyrillic script. Although it is challenging to find information on this, it will be safe to say that between 100 to 200 people speak this language today. Krimchak belongs to the Kypchak branch and its status is critically endangered. Karaim is spoken by the Karait people, a group of Crimean Tatars who follow Karait Judaism. They have been living in several different parts of Eastern Europe for centuries, primarily in Lithuania and Ukraine. Today, the Karait population is estimated to be around 2,000. Karaim has three dialects: the Crimean dialect spoken in Crimea, the Trakai-Vilnius dialect spoken in Lithuania, and Lutz-Halish dialect spoken in Ukraine. The Crimean and Lutz-Halish dialects of Karaim are considered to be almost extinct. Since Crimea was annexed by Russia in 2014, this region was also added to the Russian population census in 2021. According to the results, there are 500 Karait people and 45 Karaim speakers in Crimea. The second most significant Karaim-speaking community is in the town of Trakai in Lithuania. The 2021 Lithuanian population census shows that there are 192 Karaits in Lithuania. It is presumed that the number of Karaim speakers is between 20 to 40 in Lithuania. Although the Hebrew script was commonly used in the past, today the situation is different. The Karaims in Lithuania use the Latin script, and those in Ukraine use the Cyrillic script. The total number of Karaim speakers is around 80. This language belongs to the Kypchak branch. The status of Karaim is critically endangered. Ili Turki is spoken by the Ili Turks, who reside in the Ili Kazakh Autonomous Prefecture in western China. The Ili Turks are not recognized as a separate ethnic group in China, but as Uyghurs. Regrettably, we do not have extensive sources about this language and people. Today, there are around 30 Ili Turk families with a population of approximately 120 people. Ili Turki uses the Latin script, although it is almost exclusively a spoken language. The number of Ili Turki speakers is unknown, so I'm unable to provide an estimate. However, a rough guess would be a few dozen speakers. Ili Turki belongs to the Karluk branch. Its status is critically endangered. Tofa, also known as Tofalar, is spoken by the Tofa people, who inhabit 3 remote villages in Russia's Irkutsk Oblast. Just like the Dolgan language we mentioned earlier, Tofa is an interesting amalgam of Turkic, Russian, and Mongolian. Despite being a Turkic language, this soon-to-be extinct tongue has had a lot of influence from Mongolian and Russian. In the medieval ages, the Tofa people had a lot of contact with the Mongols, which resulted in this language borrowing hundreds of loanwords from medieval Mongolian. In addition, Tofa has many loanwords from Russian as well. Similar to almost all of the Turkic groups in the region, the Tofas are traditionally nomads and they have been engaging in reindeer husbandry, hunting, and fishing for centuries. Today, Tofa is spoken mostly by the elders of the Tofa community. The younger generation speaks Russian and does not learn their native language. Tofa uses Cyrillic letters. The total number of Tofa speakers is between 9 to 30. It is a part of the Siberian Turkic branch. The status of this language is critically endangered. Chulum, also known as Öztili, is spoken by the Chulum people. The Chulums are a Turkic people who inhabit central Russia. Chulum is considered to be the most endangered of all Turkic languages. Additionally, the Chulum people have one of the smallest populations among Turkic people. According to the 2021 population census results in Russia, there are 382 Chulums and only 47 of them speak the Chulum language. However, some linguists claim that only a dozen people out of those 47 are actually fluent at a native level. It seems unlikely that Chulum will survive this century. Linguists predict that by the late 2030s, Chulum will possibly become extinct. Chulum is written in the Cyrillic script. In total, 47 people speak this language. Chulum belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch and its status is critically endangered. However, some scholars already consider this language as extinct. In 1945, close to the end of World War II, the Soviet Army defeated the Japanese and entered the territory of Manchuria in northeast China. In the following weeks, the Soviet Army headquarters in Moscow received reports from the Soviet officers of Kyrgyz nationality about the discovery of a small local population, who identified as Kyrgyz and spoke a language that was of Turkic origin. This small group was the Fuyu Kyrgyz people, who spoke the Fuyu Kyrgyz language. Fuyu Kyrgyz, also known as Manchurian Kyrgyz, is a Turkic language that belongs to the Siberian Turkic branch. Although it might seem like it's a dialect of the Kyrgyz language, Fuyu Kyrgyz is actually not very mutually intelligible with Kyrgyz, as it's closer to other Turkic languages like Hakkas and Shor. Fuyu Kyrgyz is the easternmost spoken Turkic language in China. It is spoken in Fuyu County of the Heilongjiang province, and I'm sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. Today, around 1,400 people identify themselves as Fuyu Kyrgyz in China. However, the number of people who speak the Fuyu Kyrgyz language is around 15, which is 1% of this community's population. Fuyu Kyrgyz people are not recognized as one of the ethnic minorities of China. They are heavily influenced by the local Mongolian community, whose number is more than 300,000, and the Han Chinese majority. Mandarin and Mongolian are far more common among the Fuyu Kyrgyz as first and second languages. Given that Fuyu Kyrgyz is a spoken language only, and most of its speakers are elder people, this language is at the verge of extinction. Although an alphabet based on the Latin script was created for this language in the early 2000s, the community did not adopt it. Therefore, unfortunately, there are no known records of written tradition or inscriptions in Fuyu Kyrgyz. The UNESCO Atlas of the World's Languages in Danger classifies Fuyu Kyrgyz as critically endangered, which is the last stage before a language dies. Unlike most Turkic people, the Fuyu Kyrgyz never converted to Islam, which resulted in their language not having many Arabic loanwords. Today, Fuyu Kyrgyz people mostly follow Buddhism and a small percentage follows Tengrism. Due to their interaction with the Chinese and Mongols, the Fuyu Kyrgyz language has many Mandarin and Mongolian loanwords. But who really are the Fuyu Kyrgyz and where did they come from? Because it's so interesting to see them living quite isolated from the rest of the Turkic world. Unlike other Turkic people, we don't see any opposing ideas about the origins of the Fuyu Kyrgyz. It is accepted that they are Turks. In fact, the Fuyu Kyrgyz people are commonly accepted as the predecessors of the Yenisei Kyrgyz people, who were an ancient Turkic people who lived in the southern portion of the Yenisei River between the 3rd century BC and 13th century AD. There are two different opinions about when the Fuyu Kyrgyz people moved to the lands that they currently inhabit in modern-day China. The first idea claims that the Fuyu Kyrgyz were deported to Manchuria in the 13th century by the Mongols following the civil war between Kublai Khan and his cousin Kaidu Khan. The The second idea claims that the Fuyu Kyrgyz were deported to Manchuria in the 18th century following the wars between the Dzungar Khanate and China's Qing dynasty. Today, the Fuyu Kyrgyz mostly engage in agriculture and animal husbandry. Due to their small population and heavy influenced by the Chinese and the Mongols, sadly this language is dying. However, interestingly, although Fuyu Kyrgyz speakers are in severe decline, based on the Chinese population censuses, the number of Fuyu Kyrgyz people are increasing steadily. In 1952, 455 Fuyu Kyrgyz people were recorded. However, we don't have any data about the number of Fuyu Kyrgyz speakers then. In 1979, their population increased to 614 and around 100 people were recorded as speaking the Fuyu Kyrgyz language. In 1990, the number of Fuyu Kyrgyz people was 1,450, but only around 20 could speak the Fuyu Kyrgyz language. In 2010s, there was a slight increase in the Fuyu Kyrgyz population with around 1,500 people recorded, and 15 people were recorded as speaking this language. Here, it would be good to keep in mind that presumably only around 5 of those 15 Fuyu Kyrgyz speakers are actually fluent in this language. The rest of the speakers are proficient on an elementary basis. It is always sad to see a language disappearing. Knowing that a language that was used by many in the past is at the brink of extinction gives me a bitter feeling. However, since I speak Turkish, which is nowhere near extinction, I guess I will never truly understand this feeling of someone's native language and culture going extinct. There are around 11 Mongolic languages. Since the distinction between a dialect and a language is defined differently in various sources, it's not really possible to give an exact number. Therefore, in this video, I tried to analyze as many sources as possible and created a substantial list of the Mongolic languages spoken across Asia. All of the Mongolic languages spoken today are derived from Middle Mongolian, which was spoken during Genghis Khan's era in the 1200s. Although the total population of the Mongolic people today is a little more than 10 million, which is not very high, the Mongolic languages are spoken in quite a large geographical region. But why is that? To understand how the Mongolic languages came about, let's take a quick trip back in time to the 13th century. In 1206 AD, when Genghis Khan became the leader of the Mongols, this is how the Mongolian lands looked. Until 1294, the year when Kublai Khan died, the Mongol Empire expanded at an unimaginable speed, and therefore in this short period, the Mongol people spread to various corners of the globe. However, after Kublai Khan's demise, the Mongol Empire disintegrated quite fast. Although many Mongols returned to Mongolia, a large number of them stayed in different parts of the former empire and mixed with the indigenous people. This point in history was when Middle Mongolian started to develop into different languages. As you might surmise, Mongolian is the principal member of the Mongolic language family, and it is by far the most spoken Mongolic language. Mongolian is the official language of Mongolia. The population of the country is 3.4 million, almost all of whom speak Mongolian. However, the largest Mongolian-speaking community is not in Mongolia, but in China. In China's Inner Mongolia region, there is a large Mongolian community. According to the 2020 Chinese population census, with a population of 6.3 million, the Mongols comprise 0.45% of China's population. Unfortunately, there is no concrete data on the number of Mongolian speakers in the country. However, estimates put the Mongolian-speaking population somewhere between 3 to 4 million. When it comes to Russia, the Mongolian population is quite small. According to the 2021 census, there are 1,318 Mongolians in Russia, 1,039 of whom are reported to speak Mongolian. One interesting thing I found is that outside Mongolia and China, the largest diaspora of Mongolian citizens is in South Korea. There are a little more than 38,000 Mongolians in South Korea, most of whom are migrant workers. As a result, although the Mongolian community in South Korea is relatively new, we can still add this country as one of the Mongolian language hubs. According to the Japanese government data, Japan has close to 20,000 Mongolian residents, making it one of the countries with a higher concentration of Mongolian speakers. I'm aware that these numbers do not constitute a large diaspora. However, given that Mongolia does not have a high population, I think that these overseas Mongolian communities are worth mentioning. In addition to South Korea and Japan, other small communities of Mongolians can be found in the US, Canada, Czech Republic, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Australia. And now let's take a look at the language profile of the Mongolian language. In Mongolia, Mongolian is written in the Cyrillic script. However, the Mongolian government is planning to start using the traditional Mongolian script by 2025. In China, the traditional Mongolian script is more commonly used to write this language. 6 to 7 million people in the world speak Mongolian. This language belongs to the Mongolic branch. The Mongolic language family has 4 branches, one of which carries the same name. The status of Mongolian is considered safe. Before we continue, I want to take a few seconds to talk about this video's sponsor, which is you. I'm very happy to see that this channel is growing, and without your support, this would not be possible. Thank you so much, everyone. Buryat is the northernmost spoken Mongolic language. It is spoken by the Buryat people, who mostly reside in the Buryatia Republic in southern Russia, right on the border with Mongolia. Many sources consider Buryat a dialect of Mongolian. However, the more commonly accepted view is that it is a separate language, although both languages share many similarities. The Buryat people are of Mongolic origin. In the 13th century, during the peak of the Mongolian Empire, they were mentioned as the forest people who lived in the northern regions of the Mongolian heartland. Today, the Buryats have a culture almost identical to the Mongolian people. A large percentage of them engage in nomadic pastoralism, live in yurts, and follow Buddhism. The 2021 Russian population census tells us that there are 460,000 Buryats in Russia and that the Buryat-speaking population in the country is 393,000. This is quite a high percentage of Buryat speakers within the Buryat population. Many ethnic groups in Russia do not have such a high percentage of native language speakers. In Mongolia, there are 43,000 Buryats. However, unfortunately, I was not able to find a number for Buryat speakers. The more commonly accepted view is that most Buryats in Mongolia speak Mongolian. In China, the data about the Buryats is even more confusing. Since the Buryat people are counted as Mongols, we do not have an accurate number for Buryat people and Buryat speakers in China. However, the most common estimate shows that there might be as many as 70,000 Buryat people in China, who mostly inhabit the northeastern lands bordering Mongolia. There are no large Buryat communities outside Russia, China, and Mongolia. Buryat is written in the Cyrillic script, though until the 1917 Russian Revolution, it used the traditional Mongolian script. Around 400,000 people speak this language. Buryat belongs to the Mongolic branch. The status of Buryat is definitely endangered. The Oirat language is spoken by the Oirat people, who are of Mongolic origin. They are the westernmost Mongolic group who primarily live in Western Mongolia, Northwest China, and Russia's Northern Caucasus region. However, the Oirats who live in Russia are often regarded as the Kalmyk people. The Kalmyks are a branch of Oirats who speak the Kalmyk language and live quite far away from the Mongolian heartland. We will cover the Kalmyks and the Kalmyk language separately later in the video. It is presumed that the Oirat population in Mongolia is close to 250,000. However, the number of Oirat speakers are not well documented. In China, the Oirats are not registered as a separate ethnic group but as Mongols. It is presumed that there are between 150 to 250,000 Oirats in China, around 100,000 of whom are said to speak Oirat. In Kyrgyzstan, there is a very tiny population of the Oirat people, which is around 12,000. A handful of people in this community speak the Oirat language. Oirat uses the Cyrillic script in Mongolia and the traditional Mongolian script in China. I could not find any information about the script that the Oirats in Kyrgyzstan use. Around 350,000 Oirats are estimated to speak the Oirat language. It belongs to the Mongolic branch, and the status of Oirat is definitely endangered. Santa, also known as Dongxiang, is a Mongolic language spoken by the Dongxiang people. The Dongxiang people are recognized as one of China's 56 minority groups. According to the 2010 population census in China, there are 621,000 Dongxiang people in the country. They mostly inhabit the Dongxiang Autonomous County in central China. There are two main theories about the origin of the Dongxiang people. The most commonly accepted perspective states that they are the descendants of the non-Mongolic Central Asian immigrants who settled in China during Genghis Khan's reign in the 13th century. Over the centuries, they were influenced by the Mongols and the Chinese. The second view claims that they are the descendants of the Mongol soldiers who were garrisoned in China in the 13th century. According to this view, the Mongol soldiers remained in China, married women from Tibetan, Chinese, and Hui communities, and gradually developed their own mixed ethnic group. Today, the Dongshan people are predominantly Muslims. Their main economic activities are farming and rug making. The Santa language that the Dongshan speak has many loanwords from Mandarin. In addition, many Arabic, Tibetan, Persian, and Turkic loanwords can be found in this language. Santa uses both the Latin and Arabic scripts. Around 200,000 people are presumed to speak this language. Santa belongs to the Shirongolic branch. The status of this language is vulnerable. The Ordos language is spoken by the Ordos Mongols who live in the southern part of China's Inner Mongolia region. Today, the Ordos Mongols are not seen as a separate ethnic group in China and are counted as Mongols in Chinese population censuses. Therefore, the number of Ordos Mongols and Ordos speakers are purely based on academic estimations. The most substantial field study on the Ordos Mongols was conducted in the 1950s, which claims that the Ordos Mongol population was around 64,000. Today, however, it is estimated that there are around 100,000 Ordos Mongols in China. We owe most of what we know about Ordos Mongols to Antoine Mostard, who was a Belgian Catholic missionary in China. Between 1906 and 1925, he lived among the Ordos community in China. Alongside his missionary work, he learned fluent Mongolian and studied the Ordos language, ethnography, and folklore. He wrote several materials about this language. Mostard was indeed an interesting person, and he was known to have uttered the following words. Turkchop is putting his heart and soul into these videos. If you like this video, you can support this channel by leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. Thank you, Mr. Mostard, for your wise words. Ordos does not have a strong written tradition, however, the traditional Mongol script is often used to write this language. Unfortunately, we cannot really talk about a precise range for Ordos speakers, however, based on all the information I've read, I can say that probably between 60 to 100,000 people speak this language today. Ordos belongs to the Mongolic branch. The status of this language is definitely endangered. The Kalmyk language started as a variant of the Oirat language. However, throughout the centuries, it developed into a separate language. Kalmyk is spoken by the Kalmyk people, who live in Russia's northern Caucasus region at the edge of the Caspian Sea. As you can see here on this map, they live quite far away from the Mongolian heartland. The Kalmyks are a branch of the Oirat people and are the westernmost Mongolic people. The Kalmyk people lived in the Mongolian steppes until the 17th century when they migrated to the northern coast of the Caspian Sea, where they still reside today. The Kalmyks follow a lifestyle similar to many other smaller Mongolic groups that we'll be covering in this video. They have been engaging in animal herding, hunting, and fishing. According to the 2021 population census, there are 180,000 Kalmyks in Russia. The Kalmyks are predominantly Buddhists. They are seen as the only Buddhist inhabitants in Europe. Of course, since the definition of Europe varies in most sources, some people reject this idea as Russia's northern Caucasus lands are not seen as Europe by many. One interesting thing I found is that the Evokese language in the Star Wars universe was created based on Kalmyk. The story says that the sound designer of the movie Return of the Jedi heard Kalmyk in a documentary and found it interesting. He decided to use Kalmyk to create the Evokese language. The Kalmyk language uses the Cyrillic script. Between 110 to 160,000 people speak this language. Kalmyk belongs to the Mongolic branch. Its status is definitely endangered. Daur, also known as Dagur, is a Mongolic language spoken by the Daur people in the Morindava Daur Autonomous Banner in China's Inner Mongolia region. The Daur people are officially recognized as one of the 56 ethnic groups in China. Therefore, we can access solid data about their population. According to the 2010 population census, there are 132,000 Daurs in China. The main economic activities of the Daurs are farming and animal husbandry. Most of the Daurs follow shamanism. There is also a considerable number of people in the Daur community who follow Tibetan Buddhism. The Daurs have a unique cultural sport named Beiko, which is also known as Daur hockey. This game has been played for nearly 1,000 years in the Daur community. Today, Daur is not a written language. Although a writing system based on the Latin script was created by a Daur scholar, the Daurs are not known to write this language often. Around 100,000 people are said to speak this language. In the Mongolic languages family, Daur forms its own branch that carries the same name. Therefore, the Daur language belongs to the Daur branch. This language is categorized as critically endangered, meaning Daur faces the threat of extinction. Mongol is spoken by the Mongol people in the Huzhou Autonomous County in central China. The Mongol people are also known as the Two People or Tsagan Mongols, meaning white Mongols. They are among the 5 Mongolic groups officially recognized as minorities by the Chinese government. The 2010 Chinese population census shows that there are 290,000 Mongol people in China. The Mongol language has 2 dialects, Huzhou Mongol and Minhe Mongol. These 2 dialects are not very mutually intelligible. The most common theory about the origins of the Mongols is that they are most probably the descendants of the Mongolian troops who garrisoned in China during Genghis Khan's era. After the collapse of the Mongol Empire, these soldiers remained in China and built families. They have managed to protect their language and cultural identity until today. Today, the Mongols are known to be herders and farmers. Many Mongols are seasonal workers and a considerable number of them work as miners. The Mongol community is predominantly Buddhist. However, Christianity is also becoming more and more popular due to the efforts of Korean and American missionaries. Although a Latin-based alphabet was created for this language, Mongol does not have a strong written tradition. Around 80,000 people speak this language. Mongol belongs to the Shirongolic branch. Its status is severely endangered. The Bonan language is spoken by the Bonan people. The Bonans are officially recognized as a separate group by the Chinese government. With a population of a little more than 20,000 people, they are one of the smallest ethnic groups in China. Today, the Bonans live in Jishishan, Bonan, Dongxiang and Salar Autonomous County in central China. Yes, this is the name of one single county. Like many of the Mongol groups in China, the Bonans share a similar history regarding their origin. It is widely accepted that the ancestors of the Bonans were Mongol troops stationed in China. Specifically, sometime between the late 13th and early 14th centuries, the forebears of the Bonans were assigned to Tongran County in central China to patrol the area against the Tibetans. Eventually, they stayed in this region and mixed with the Tibetans and Chinese. Throughout the centuries, the Bonans lived in the same region. In the late 1600s, a group of Bonans converted to Islam and moved east to the lands that they reside in today. The Bonans who remained Buddhists eventually mixed with the rest of the people in the region, primarily with the other Mongol groups. The Bonans who are recognized as a separate minority today are the Muslim members of this community. The Bonan language spoken by the Muslim Bonans is influenced by Mandarin and is much better preserved. The Bonan spoken by the Buddhist Bonans is influenced by Tibetan and is not as well preserved. In addition, the Muslim Bonans have a much higher population compared to the Buddhist Bonans. Bonan does not have a writing system, however the Tibetan script is rarely used to write this language among the Buddhist Bonans. 6,000 to 8,000 people speak Bonan. This language belongs to the Shirongolic branch. Its status is definitely endangered. Eastern Uyghur is spoken by the Uyghur people. Unlike all the people we have covered so far, the Uyghur people are actually of Turkic origin, or at least they're more commonly accepted to be of Turkic origin. The Uyghur people are one of the smallest ethnic groups in China. According to the 2020 Chinese population census results, the Uyghur population in China is 14,706. The Uyghurs live in the Sunan Uyghur Autonomous County in northern China and consist of 4 linguistically different groups. The first and largest group is the Western Uyghur people, around 4,600 of whom speak Western Uyghur, which is a Turkic language. It is commonly accepted that the Western Uyghurs are the descendants of the Uyghurs who fled to the Gansu province after the collapse of the Uyghur Empire in 840 AD. The second group consists of the Eastern Uyghurs, around 2,800 of whom speak the Eastern Uyghur language. Unlike Western Uyghur, Eastern Uyghur is a Mongolic language. Regarding the ancestry of the Eastern Uyghurs, there are 2 main theories. As I mentioned in the beginning of this chapter, the first and more popular one claims that they share the same ancestry as the Western Uyghurs, but became Mongolized and adopted the Mongolic language over the centuries. The second theory claims that they're the descendants of the Mongol groups that settled in northern China in the 13th century. The remaining two Uyghur groups consist of Tibetan and Mandarin-speaking members. However, they are not as large as the Eastern Uyghur and Western Uyghur-speaking groups. Like many of the Mongolic people who live in China, the Uyghur people are known for engaging in farming and animal husbandry. As the economic condition of the Sunan Uyghur Autonomous County is not great, younger members of the Uyghur community are leaving for bigger cities to find better job opportunities. Since Eastern Uyghur is not spoken widely in the rest of China, this language is getting weaker each year with young Uyghurs leaving their homeland. Eastern Uyghur is a spoken language and does not have a writing system. Around 2,800 people speak this language. It belongs to the Mongolic branch. The status of Eastern Uyghur is severely endangered. Well, I think Mogol is the most interesting language that we'll cover in this video. At least it's my personal favorite because it has quite an interesting story. The Mogol language is spoken by the Mogol people who inhabit two isolated villages in West Afghanistan's Herat province. The ancestors of the Mogol people were Mongol soldiers stationed by Genghis Khan in West Afghanistan in the 13th century. Like many of the Mongol garrisons in West Asia, the Mogol people remained settled in the lands they patrolled and never returned to Mongolia. Many Mongol groups like the Mongols lived across modern-day Afghanistan for centuries. However, almost all of them eventually mixed with larger ethnic groups and lost their language and cultural identity. The Mongols are seen as the last of these people who still carry some remnants from the Mongolian heartland. In previous studies, the Mongols were reported to be following a nomadic lifestyle and engaging in animal husbandry. The Mogol language carries characteristics from the Middle Mongolian that was spoken in Genghis Khan's era. Over the centuries, as a result of interaction with Iranic groups, the Mogol language was heavily influenced by Persian. Unfortunately, we don't have any contemporary data about the population of the Mogol people and Mogol speakers. Therefore, I will be talking about older data from previous decades. According to the field studies, the Mogol population in the 1970s was between 2,000 to 3,000. Very few Mogols were able to speak the Mogol language. In the early 2000s, it was estimated that fewer than 200 people spoke this language. Today, since there are not many substantial studies about the Mogol people, it is simply not known whether this language has gone extinct or not. Mogol does not have a writing system. It is not known how many people speak this language today or whether this language is spoken at all. It belongs to the Mogol branch that was named after Mogol itself. Mogol is categorized as critically endangered or extinct. The Tungusic language family is characterized by its agglutinative structure, where words are formed by adding morphemes to a root, and by the presence of a vowel harmony, which ensures consistency in vowel sounds within a word. These languages typically follow a subject, object, verb, word order and feature a rich case system that marks grammatical relations such as subject, object, and direction. Despite these shared features, the Tungusic languages are highly diverse, with speakers historically spread across Siberia, northeastern China, and Mongolia. However, many of these languages are now critically endangered, with efforts to preserve them facing significant challenges. The Tungusic people comprise various indigenous groups who primarily live in Siberia and northeastern China. Historically, the Tungusic tribes are believed to have originated in the region between Lake Baikal and the Amur River. Archaeological and linguistic evidence indicates that the ancestors of the Tungusic peoples were among the early inhabitants of the Siberian taiga and surrounding areas. Over millennia, they migrated and settled in various parts of Siberia, Manchuria, and Mongolia. Their culture and social organization evolved in response to the diverse and often harsh environments in which they lived. Traditionally, the Tungusic people were semi-nomadic hunters, fishers, and gatherers. They lived in small mobile communities, relying on the rich natural resources of the Siberian taiga and Manchurian forests. The most common academic perspective divides the Tungusic people into two subgroups, Northern Tungusic people and Southern Tungusic people. This division is also reflected in the classification of their languages, with the Northern Tungusic branch and the Southern Tungusic branch. The Northern Tungusic people lived in the harsher climates of Siberia and primarily engaged in reindeer husbandry, hunting, and fishing. They had closer interactions with the Mongols and Turks. In contrast, the Southern Tungusic people lived in Manchuria, which is in northeast China, and followed a more sedentary lifestyle. Unlike the Northern Tungusic people, the Southern Tungusics were more influenced by the Koreans and Chinese. Today, the total population of the Tungusic people is approximately 10.7 million. However, the total number of Tungusic speakers is around 75,000, which is not even 1% of the population. This is a worrying trend, and it highlights the fact that the Tungusic language family is severely endangered. Xibe is spoken by the Xibe people, who are officially recognized as one of the 56 minority groups in China. According to the 2010 census, there are 190,481 Xibe people in China. Although the main hub of the Xibe people is considered to be the northwest part of the country, there is also a group of Xibe people living at the opposite edge of China. Compared to the eastern Xibes, the western Xibes have managed to preserve their culture to a much higher degree. The clearest evidence of this is the language. Eastern Xibes are mostly Sinicized, and as a result, they don't speak Xibe. However, the Xibe community in northwest China still actively speaks the Xibe language. There are two main theories about the origin of the Xibes. The more commonly accepted theory claims that the Xibe people are a branch of another Tungusic group, the Manchu people. It is believed that in the 18th century, China's Shang dynasty resettled a group of Manchu people in western China. Their aim was to form a garrison out of these Manchus and use them to defend the western frontier of the country against external threats. The other theory, although not widely accepted, suggests that the Xibe descended from the Xianbei people, an ancient nomadic group that inhabited Central Asia 2 millennia ago. Historically, the Xibe had a solid reputation for being excellent horse riders and archers. Traditionally, they have followed shamanism and Buddhism. Over the past centuries, the Xibes built several Buddhist monasteries in northwest China, all of which are now in ruins. Today, like many other smaller Turkic, Mongolic and Tungusic communities in China, the Xibe mainly engage in farming and animal husbandry. The Xibes have preserved many of their cultural elements such as traditional cuisine, clothing, dances, music and instruments. In comparison to the other Tungusic languages that we'll be covering in this video, Xibe is in relatively better condition. Today, in Kapgal Xibe Autonomous County in China, where most of the Xibe live, this language is taught in several primary schools. There are also Xibe language classes at Yili Normal University. Since 1946, a newspaper named Kapgal News has been publishing weekly papers in the Xibe language. It is said that the weekly circulation is around 1,000, which is actually not bad at all. In addition to this, in Kapgal Xibe Autonomous County, there are often radio and TV broadcasts in the Xibe language. Now let's take a look at the language profile of Xibe. If you have seen my recent videos about the Turkic and Mongolic languages, then you must be familiar with this term. If not, language profile is a term I coined for this language video series. Xibe is written with the Manchu alphabet. It is the most spoken Tungusic language with around 30,000 speakers. Xibe belongs to the southern Tungusic branch and its status is severely endangered. Evenki is spoken by the Evenki people, who are spread over a vast area comprising Siberia, China and Mongolia. The Evenki people are recognized as minorities in both China and Russia. The 2010, 2015 and 2021 censuses shows us that there are 30,875 Evenkis in China, 537 in Mongolia, and 39,226 in Russia. Therefore, the global population of the Evenki people is close to 71,000. Traditionally, the Evenki were nomadic hunter-gatherers and reindeer herders adapted to the harsh Siberian environment. They have cultural and genetic ties to the other indigenous Siberian groups and have historically interacted with neighboring Mongolic, Turkic and Chinese peoples. One interesting point we see on this map is that none of the other Tungusic people inhabit such a vast area as the Evenkis. Even in modern-day Russia, after the Russians, the Evenkis are the second ethnic group that covers the largest land in the country. But why is that? What made the Evenkis spread to such a vast territory? The answer lies in reindeer. Many of the indigenous groups who have inhabited Siberia over the past centuries used reindeer primarily for meat, milk and basic transportation. However, the Evenkis mastered how to ride them. As a result, they were able to venture into the vast uncharted territories of Siberia. Despite their small population, they spread over a huge area. Regarding the origin of the Evenki people, a quote by linguist Glafira Makarievna Vasilyevich summarizes the most widely accepted theory. The origin of the Evenki is the result of complex processes, different in time, involving the mixing of different ancient aboriginal tribes from the north of Siberia with tribes related in language to the Turks and Mongols. So, although the Evenkis are considered part of the Tungusic people today, they are culturally influenced by other indigenous groups depending on where they live. For example, the Evenkis here would be culturally and to some extent linguistically influenced by the Turkic people and other indigenous groups of Siberia, whereas here, Mongol influence would be more prevalent, and here Chinese influence would be stronger. Despite these differences among widespread Evenki communities, one thing still acts as the backbone of Evenki society, the Evenki language. Today, only a very small portion of the Evenkis engage in reindeer herding. Most of them work in industries such as farming, regional industries, and animal husbandry. Most of the Evenkis today follow a belief system that is a mix of shamanism, animism, and Tibetan Buddhism. A small percentage of the Evenkis are Orthodox Christians due to the influence of the Russian Orthodox Church. The word shaman comes from the Evenki language. Even in modern-day Evenki society, shamans hold an important place and are often consulted regarding health and spiritual matters. Today, many Evenkis strongly adhere to their traditions. We can still see practices of ancestor worship and prayers to the mountain god, wind god, and fire god among the Evenkis. Compared to China, the Evenki language has a much stronger status in Russia. In Russia, in addition to a larger Evenki-speaking population, there is also a weekly newspaper named Evenkiskaya Zhizn, which is published in both Russian and Evenki. Here you can see a page from this newspaper in the Evenki language. In Russia, Evenki is written in the Cyrillic script, and in China it is written either in the Latin or traditional Mongolian script. Unfortunately, there is little to no information about the Evenki language in Mongolia. Around 11,000 people are estimated to speak Evenki. This language is a member of the Northern Tungusic branch, and its status is severely endangered. Evan is the northernmost spoken Tungusic language. It is the language of the Evan people, who, as you might surmise, are also the northernmost Tungusic people. They live in the farthest reaches of deep Siberia. The Evans are related to the Evenki people, whom I mentioned a few seconds ago. These two groups share many cultural and linguistic similarities. In addition to Evenki, Russian has also influenced Evan quite significantly. As you see on this map, the Evans inhabit an enormous area. Despite their small population of 20,000, the Evans cover a landmass as large as Western Europe. Like the Evenki people, the Evans have traditionally been reindeer herders for centuries. The lands that the Evans inhabit have very harsh weather and living conditions, leaving them with little choice but to rely on reindeer for nearly everything in their lives. These are the lands that are unsuitable for horse riding, farming, and fishing for most of the year. Centuries ago, when the Evans first encountered the Turks and Mongols, they were introduced to a horse-based culture. However, after a short attempt, the Evans abandoned using horses in their daily lives because they were simply unable to ride horses in the harsh Siberian terrain. It wouldn't be wrong to say that nature and reindeer herding are two of the most prominent elements of Evan culture. As a result, the Evan language has a significantly large vocabulary related to their nomadic lifestyle and reindeer herding. For example, the Evans use 14 different words to describe similar actions related to herding and grazing. Although the Evans predominantly followed shamanism and animism in the past, today most of them are Orthodox Christians. In fact, the Evans are one of the most Christianized peoples of the north, but why is that? The answer lies in the Russian influence. Starting from the 1800s, the Russians built many churches along Evan seasonal migration routes, and Russian missionaries were very active in the Evan community. Today, only a small number of Evans adhere to their traditional beliefs. Today, Evan is taught in a number of schools and universities. In 2010, there were 5,700 speakers, and by 2021, this number had risen to 7,200, indicating that the teaching of the Evan language has yielded positive results. Evan uses the Cyrillic script. As mentioned earlier, 7,200 people speak this language. Evan belongs to the Northern Tungusic branch, and its status is classified as severely endangered. Nanai is the language of the Nanai people, who live in Russia's Khabarovsk Krai, a region bordering China's northern frontier and the Pacific Ocean. There is also a Nanai community in northeast China's Heilongjiang province. A small difference is that the Nanai people in China are more commonly known as the Hezan. The Nanai population is approximately 11,600 in Russia and 5,300 in China. The Nanai people are descendants of ancient populations that lived in the Amur River basin for thousands of years. Their ancestors likely belonged to the early Tungusic-speaking tribes that migrated into modern-day northeast China from central Siberia. Over time, the Nanai developed a distinct identity shaped by their adaptation to the riverine and forested environment of the Amur Basin and their interactions with neighboring groups such as Chinese, Mongol, and later Russian populations. The Nanai's main economic activity was fishing, historically the cornerstone of their subsistence. The Amur River provided a rich source of fish, which the Nanai utilized in various creative ways, particularly in the creation of fish skin clothing, a unique aspect of their culture. This tradition led to the Nanai being called the Fish Skin Tribe. Just like the Nanai people, the Nanai language is also known as Hezhen in China. Compared to Russia, this language has a much more fragile status in China. Unfortunately, I was unable to find a precise number for Nanai speakers in China, but this number is presumed to be only a few dozen. In Russia, however, there is a much more united Nanai community working to preserve the language. The 2021 census shows that 6,600 people speak Nanai in Russia. However, only a fraction of these 6,600 people are able to speak Nanai with native level fluency. Field studies have shown that most young Nanai speak Russian as their native language and have only an intermediate knowledge of Nanai. Today, mostly those over 40 in the Nanai community speak their ancestral language fluently. Currently, Nanai is taught in several villages in Khabarovsk Krai, though this education is sufficient only for students to learn Nanai as a second language. In addition, the Nanai community in Russia is actively working on publishing books and other printed materials in the Nanai language, which are also used in schools. In Russia, Nanai is written in the Cyrillic script. In China, since Nanai is primarily a spoken language, there is no official alphabet used. Including a few dozen speakers in China, approximately 6,700 people speak this language in total. Nanai belongs to the Southern Tungusic branch. Its status is considered severely endangered. Orakan is spoken by the Orakan people, who live in northeast China's Inner Mongolia and Heilongjiang provinces. With a population of around 8,600, they are the second smallest Tungusic minority in China. The Orakan are believed to have descended from ancient Tungusic tribes that inhabited the vast forested regions of northeastern China. Their ancestors were hunter-gatherers who navigated the dense forest and river valleys of this region for thousands of years. The name Orakan itself means people of the reindeer, reflecting their deep connection to the forest and wildlife. As they settled in the dense forests of northeastern China, the Orakan developed a distinct culture centered on hunting, fishing, and gathering. Their language evolved in relative isolation from other Tungusic languages, contributing to the unique cultural and linguistic identity of the Orakan people. The Orakan's connection to the natural environment was central to their way of life. They practiced shamanism with a strong belief in the spirits of nature and their ancestors. Shamans played a crucial role in their society, performing rituals to communicate with the spirit world, heal the sick, and ensure successful hunts. Over the centuries, the Orakan interacted with other ethnic groups in the region, including the Mongols, Manchus, and Han Chinese. These interactions influenced their culture and language, but did not fundamentally alter their identity. The Orakan maintained their distinct way of life even as they were incorporated into larger political entities such as the Qing dynasty, where they served as hunters and soldiers. Today, their main economic activity is agriculture. Since hunting in the forest lands surrounding the Orakan settlements is forbidden by the Chinese government, the Orakan have adopted a more sedentary lifestyle. Since the 1950s, Christianity has become increasingly popular in the Orakan community, particularly after the last Orakan shaman died in the year 2000, marking a significant decline in shamanism. As you can see on this map, the Orakan lived close to the Evenki-speaking tribes, which resulted in Orakan absorbing significant influence from Evenki. Today, Orakan and Evenki speakers can understand each other to a considerable degree. Orakan does not have a strong written tradition. Although Latin script is used at times, most Orakans use Mandarin for written communication. It is estimated that fewer than 1,000 people speak this language. Orakan belongs to the Northern Tungusic branch, and its status is classified as severely endangered. Udege, also known as Udihe, is one of the more endangered Tungusic languages. It is spoken by the Udege minority who inhabit Russia's Far East, specifically Primorsky Krai, which borders China and North Korea. According to the 2021 Russian census, there are 1,325 Udege in Russia, making them one of the smallest ethnic groups in the country. The origin of the Udege people is not well studied and therefore remains obscure. However, the most commonly accepted theory is that they are closely tied to the broader history of the Tungusic peoples. The Udege are thought to have originated from the mingling of various Tungusic tribes with other indigenous groups in the Russian Far East. These interactions likely took place over thousands of years, leading to the unique cultural and linguistic traits of the Udege. The Udege have been traditionally semi-nomadic, relying on hunting, fishing, and gathering for their subsistence. They are skilled hunters, particularly known for their use of dog sleds and skis in the harsh winter conditions of the taiga. Their primary prey includes sable, deer, and other forest animals, and they possess deep knowledge of the taiga's flora and fauna. I feel like I'm repeating myself when I discuss the origins, cultures, and lifestyles of the Tungusic people, but it reflects the reality of their situation. Most of the Tungusic people have lived in similar habitats that offer a limited range of daily life practices, so the information I provide about them often overlaps. The Udege have a rich spiritual tradition deeply connected to nature. They practice animism, believing that all elements of the natural world, animals, plants, rivers, and mountains are inhabited by spirits. These spirits must be respected and can influence human lives. Shamans who act as intermediaries between the human and spirit worlds have historically played a central role in Udege society, conducting rituals and ceremonies to ensure successful hunts, heal the sick, and maintain harmony with the spirits. Today, only a handful of Udege adhere to their traditional religious practices. The lands where the Udege community lives today are also the habitat of Siberian tigers, which they hold in almost divine reverence. Hunting this species is considered unholy. For years, the Siberian tigers and the Udege have shared vast forest lands and lived side by side in harmony. As you can see on this map, the Udege live almost side by side with the Nanay and Oroch people. As you might surmise, this has resulted in the Udege sharing many cultural similarities with the Nanay and Oroch people and borrowing a lot of loanwords from the Nanay and Oroch languages. Just a side note, Oroch is one of the Tungusic languages that we'll cover soon in this video. Until the 1930s, Udege was a spoken language only and did not have a writing system. Initially, a Latin script was created for Udege, but in 1938, the Cyrillic script, which is still used today, was adopted. For reference, before moving on to the language profile, I would like to show you how the Latin and Cyrillic scripts for Udege look. Now, regarding the language profile, as mentioned, Udege uses the Cyrillic script. The 2021 Russian census shows that around 600 people speak Udege. However, if we only count those who can speak Udege with native fluency, there are fewer than 100 speakers. This language belongs to the Southern Tungusic branch, and its status is critically endangered. We stay in the Udege homeland that we have covered, but travel a little farther north to the coast of Russia, right across from Sakhalin Island. Here we encounter the Ulch people, one of the Tungusic tribes in this vast region. The Ulch people speak a language named after them, the Ulch language. Today, the Ulch population in Russia is 2,472, making them one of the smallest ethnic groups in the country. Just like many of the Tungusic people featured in this video, the ancestors of the Ulch people were ancient inhabitants of the Siberian taiga. They are closely related to other Tungusic peoples such as the Nanay and the Oroch. Traditionally, the Ulch people were semi-nomadic, engaging in fishing, hunting, and gathering as their primary means of subsistence. The Amur River, rich in fish like sturgeon and salmon, has played a central role in their economy and culture. Fishing is not just a livelihood, but also a cultural practice deeply embedded in their rituals and traditions. Throughout their history, the Ulch have interacted with various neighboring groups, including the Nanay, Oroch, and even more distant groups like the Ainu of Japan's Hokkaido Island and the Nivk of Sakhalin. These interactions were often characterized by trade, intermarriage, and cultural exchange. The Ulch traded fish, furs, and other goods with their neighbors, contributing to a shared cultural region along the Amur River. The Ulch have a rich cultural heritage that includes folklore and traditional crafts. Their crafts often involve materials such as fish skin, birch bark, and wood used to create clothing, tools, and other everyday items. Shamanism has historically been an important part of Ulch's spiritual life. These practices involve rituals, dances, and use of sacred objects to communicate with spirits and ancestors. While many Ulch have converted to Orthodox Christianity due to Russian influence, traditional beliefs and practices still persist, especially among the older generation. Today, like many indigenous groups in Russia, the Ulch people face significant challenges, including the loss of their language, cultural assimilation, and economic hardships. Industrial development and environmental changes in the region have also impacted their traditional ways of life. Efforts are being made to preserve the Ulch language and culture, but these efforts face obstacles due to the small population and limited resources. Until the 1930s, Ulch did not have a writing system. Today, although Cyrillic script is officially used, Ulch is almost exclusively a spoken language. There are currently around 100 speakers of this language. It belongs to the Southern Tungusic branch, and its status is critically endangered. Oroch, also known as Orochi, is spoken by the Oroch people. The 2021 Russian census shows that there are 527 Oroch people in Russia. The precise origins of the Oroch are difficult to pinpoint due to the lack of written records. However, it is generally believed that the Oroch, like other Tungusic groups, migrated to their current homeland in the Russian Far East over several millennia. They traditionally lived as semi-nomadic hunters, fishers, and gatherers in the riverine and coastal areas of what is now Khabarovsk Krai. Their way of life was intimately connected to the Amur River and the surrounding forests, where they hunted game such as deer and wild boar, fished for salmon and other fish, and gathered wild plants. The Oroch practiced animism with a strong belief in spirits associated with nature, and their shamans played a central role in religious and social life. The arrival of Russian explorers and traders in the 17th century marked the beginning of significant changes for the Oroch people. With Russian colonization came the imposition of taxes, forced assimilation, and the spread of diseases to which the Oroch and other indigenous groups had little resistance. These factors led to a decline in their population and a disruption of their traditional way of life. During the Soviet era, the Oroch, like many other indigenous groups, were subjected to policies aimed at integrating them into the Soviet system. This included the establishment of collective farms, the promotion of Russian as a dominant language, and efforts to suppress indigenous cultures and religions. Many Oroch were resettled into larger, centralized villages, and their children were often sent to boarding schools where they were taught Russian and discouraged from practicing their traditional customs. The Oroch language evolved with its own specific vocabulary, mainly in areas related to their subsistence practices such as hunting, fishing, and gathering. This linguistic evolution reflects the Oroch's deep connection to their land and way of life. Oroch is known to have several dialects, although the distinctions between them are not always clear due to the limited number of speakers and the declining use of the language. These dialects likely correspond to the different clans and geographical areas where the Oroch lived. The Oroch community today is quite endangered. They continue to face challenges related to cultural preservation, economic marginalization, and environmental degradation. However, there have been efforts in recent years to revive and promote the Oroch language and culture, including the teaching of the Oroch language in schools and the organization of cultural festivals. Oroch does not have a writing system. Although the 2021 census shows that 119 people speak Oroch, it is actually presumed that only between 20 to 40 people can speak this language fluently. Oroch belongs to the Southern Tungusic branch. Its status is critically endangered. Negidal is the language of the Negidal people, who live slightly north of the Nanay homeland. The 2021 census records the Negidal population at 481, making them the second smallest Tungusic group. The exact origins of the Negidal people are difficult to pinpoint due to the migratory and intermingling nature of the indigenous peoples of East Siberia. However, it is believed that they emerged as a distinct group through a combination of intermarriage and cultural exchange between Evenki populations and other neighboring indigenous groups such as the Nivk and Ainu. The Negidal language is closely related to Evenki and Even. The name Negidal is derived from the Evenki word Nigedida, meaning coastal or riverbank dwellers, reflecting their traditional settlement patterns. Although many sources refer to Negidal as a separate language, there are also considerable claims that it is a dialect of Evenki. Historically, the Negidals were semi-nomadic, relying on hunting, fishing, and reindeer herding for their subsistence. They were skilled hunters and fishers, catching species like salmon in the rivers. Their economy was traditionally based on the seasonal cycles of nature, and they used the resources of the taiga and rivers sustainably. The traditional religion of the Negidals involved animistic beliefs. Today, alongside traditional beliefs, Christianity is also common in the Negidal community. Like many indigenous peoples in Russia's Far East, the Negidals were influenced by the activities of Russian Orthodox missionaries. Negidal has two dialects, Upper and Lower. However, it is believed that the Lower dialect has gone extinct. Between 2005 and 2017, several field studies attempted to document Negidal speakers. Despite these efforts, no Lower Negidal speakers were found. However, multiple Upper Negidal speakers were recorded. When it comes to the question whether Negidal has an alphabet, the answer is both yes and no. Until the late 20th century, Negidal was a spoken language only. In 1992, an alphabet based on the Cyrillic script was created for this language, but it has not been widely used. In 2010, however, a textbook in Negidal was published for primary schools. Today, most Negidals speak Russian. Many Negidal speakers are elderly, making it almost impossible to pass the language on to younger generations. It is commonly accepted that Negidal will become a dead language within 2 to 3 decades. Negidal is written in the Cyrillic script. However, as mentioned earlier, it is important to note that almost no one uses Negidal for written communication. According to the 2021 Russian census, 29 people speak this language. It belongs to the Northern Tungusic branch, and its status is critically endangered. Orok, not to be confused with Oroch, which we recently covered, is the language of the Orok people. The Oroks, also known as the Uilta people, are the smallest Tungusic group with a population of 268. They primarily inhabit Sakhalin Island in Russia, and there may be a very small Orok community on Japan's Hokkaido Island. In 1980, it was documented that around 20 Oroks lived on Hokkaido, a few of whom spoke Orok. However, the current number of Oroks on Hokkaido is unknown. The ancestors of the Oroks are believed to have lived in the region around the Amur River and northeastern Asia. They eventually spread into the Russian Far East, including Sakhalin Island. This island, situated between the Sea of Okhotsk and the Pacific Ocean, provided a rich but challenging environment for their traditional subsistence activities, which included hunting sea mammals, fishing, and reindeer herding. Over time, the Oroks developed distinct cultural practices and social structures influenced by their environment and interactions with neighboring groups. The Orok people lived in small, extended family groups. Their social structure was relatively egalitarian, with leadership roles often based on respect and skill rather than formal authority. Today, the Orok people face challenges related to preserving their cultural identity and language, partly due to their declining population and the continued dominance of the Russian language. Historically, Orok was an oral language with no native writing system. In the 20th century, attempts were made to develop a writing system for the language, typically using a modified Cyrillic alphabet. However, this system has not been widely adopted, and the language remains primarily oral. Some sources estimate the number of Orok speakers to be between 40 and 116, but a more realistic range is likely between 20 and 40. Orok belongs to the Southern Tungusic branch and is classified as critically endangered. Alright, things are about to get interesting with Manchu, a language I personally find full of contrasts. The Manchu people are by far the largest Tungusic group with a population of around 10.6 million. However, the Manchu language is the least spoken of the Tungusic languages with around 20 speakers, an incredible contrast. The Manchu language will be the focus of our longest segment in this video. I'll first delve into the history of the Manchu people in detail and then provide in-depth information about the language itself. Also, if you have been watching this video up to this point, you're a true supporter, and I'm so happy to share this linguistic journey with you. The origins of the Manchu people can be traced back to the Jurchen tribes, who were a part of the larger Tungusic-speaking groups in Northeast Asia. They lived primarily in the forests and mountains of Manchuria, a region that today lies between China, Russia, and North Korea. The Jurchens were originally semi-nomadic, engaging in hunting, fishing, and some agriculture, and they had a tribal social structure. The Jurchens first rose to prominence in the early 12th century when they founded the Jin dynasty in 1115. The Jin dynasty adopted many elements of Chinese culture and governance while maintaining their distinct identity. However, the dynasty eventually fell to the Mongols in the early 13th century, and the Jurchens were absorbed into the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty. After the fall of the Jin dynasty, the Jurchens retreated to their homeland in Manchuria, living under the shadow of the Mongol Empire and later the Ming dynasty. During this period, the Jurchens continued to maintain their distinct culture and language despite interactions and conflicts with the neighboring Chinese and Mongol states. In 1635, Hong Taiji, son of the Jurchen leader Nurhaci, officially adopted the name Manchu for the Jurchen people and language. The reasons for this change are still debated, but it likely reflected an effort to unify the people under a new distinct identity as they prepared to challenge the Ming dynasty for control of China. Under Hong Taiji and his successors, the Manchus expanded their influence and eventually conquered Beijing in 1644, establishing the Qing dynasty, which would rule China until 1912. The Qing dynasty marked the culmination of the Manchus' rise from a collection of semi-nomadic tribes to the rulers of one of the world's most powerful empires. It was the last imperial dynasty of China, under which China experienced substantial territorial expansion, including the annexation of Tibet, Xinjiang, Taiwan, and Mongolia. Culturally, the Manchus have roots in broader Tungusic traditions, which include shamanism, a deep connection to nature, and a distinct language related to other Tungusic languages like Evenki and Nanai. The Manchu rulers maintained their distinct identity through policies promoting the Manchu language and culture while also adopting many aspects of Han Chinese culture. They imposed strict regulations to prevent intermarriage between the Manchus and Han Chinese, ensuring the preservation of their ethnic identity. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, the Manchu people faced significant challenges. Many Manchus assimilated into Han Chinese society, adopting Han surnames and customs to avoid discrimination. The Manchu language and cultural practices gradually declined, although recent years have seen efforts to revive them. Today, with a population of over 10 million, the Manchu people are recognized as one of China's 56 ethnic groups. Although many have been fully assimilated, some efforts are being made to preserve and revive the Manchu language, culture, and traditions. Now, let's explore the Manchu language in detail. Among all the Tungusic languages, Manchu is historically the most significant. While the other Tungusic languages are also important, Manchu was the only one made the official language of a powerful empire. Manchu evolved from the Jurchen language, spoken by the Jurchen tribes of Northeast Asia, who, as we recently mentioned, were the ancestors of the Manchu people. In the 12th century, during the Jin dynasty, the Jurchen language was written using a script derived from Khitan, a Mongolic language. This script was complex and not widely adopted. After the fall of the Jin dynasty and the decline of Jurchen political power, the use of Jurchen language and script diminished. In the early 17th century, under the leadership of Nurhaci, the Manchu language was revitalized as part of his efforts to unite the Jurchen tribes and create a new Manchu identity. Nurhaci ordered the creation of a new script for the Manchu language based on the Mongolian script, which itself derived from the Uyghur script. The Manchu script is written vertically from top to bottom and left to right, similar to the Mongolian script. It consists of letters representing consonants and vowels, and the script was designed to accommodate the phonetic structure of the Manchu language. This new script made the language more accessible and standardized for administrative and military purposes. With the establishment of the Qing dynasty in 1644, the Manchu language became the official language of the imperial court, government, and military. During the early Qing period, Manchu was widely used for official documents, edicts, and communication within the ruling elite. The language played a key role in the administration of the vast Qing Empire, which included various ethnic groups and languages. However, even during the height of the Qing dynasty, Manchu was not the primary language of the majority Han Chinese population. Instead, it coexisted with Classical Chinese, which remained the dominant language among the common people. The use of Manchu began to decline in the 18th century as the Qing rulers increasingly adopted Chinese language and customs. Over time, even the Manchu elite became more Sinicized, and the Manchu language was gradually replaced by Chinese in both official and daily use. By the late 19th century, Manchu had largely fallen out of use as a spoken language, and it continued to decline after the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912. It is astonishing that such a prominent language now has only a few dozen speakers. In recent years, efforts to revive and preserve the Manchu language have been made, particularly among scholars and members of the Manchu ethnic group. These efforts include teaching Manchu in universities, publishing textbooks and dictionaries, and digitizing historical Manchu texts. The language remains of great interest to historians and linguists because of its importance in understanding Qing dynasty history and administration. A significant number of Chingara documents are written in Manchu, making knowledge of this language valuable for research in this field. Manchu is written in the Manchu script and is currently spoken by around 20 people. It belongs to the Southern Tungusic branch and is classified as critically endangered. One of the first things I mentioned at the beginning of this video was taking a neutral and inclusive approach to the Altaic languages. Therefore, I would also like to briefly tell you about the much less commonly accepted additions to the Micro-Altaic group, the Koreanic and Japonic languages. The inclusion of Koreanic and Japonic languages in the Macro-Altaic group was largely supported in the early 20th century because these two families share some key features with the Turkic, Tungusic, and Mongolic families. However, as I mentioned earlier, modern linguistics generally views the Micro-Altaic grouping with skepticism, and the Macro-Altaic grouping is even more controversial. The similarities between Koreanic, Japonic, and the Turkic, Mongolic, and Tungusic families are often seen as a result of aerial contact or coincidence rather than a genetic relationship. If we were to include these two new families in the Altaic theory, the Altaic-speaking population would increase from about 210 million to around 415 million, almost doubling. However, the geographic area of Altaic-speaking lands wouldn't increase significantly, as Japonic and Koreanic languages are spoken in much smaller areas compared to, for example, Turkic languages. Korean is the official language of both South Korea and North Korea. South Korea has a population of 51.7 million and North Korea has 26.1 million. Given that both countries have extremely homogeneous populations, it is accurate to say that nearly everyone speaks Korean as a native language in these countries. Additionally, between 1.7 to 2.3 million Koreans live in China, with around 1 million of them speaking Korean. In Japan, the Korean population is close to 827,000, around 500,000 of them speaking Korean. Not many people know this, but there's also a significant Korean population in some post-Soviet Central Asian countries. These Koreans, known as Koryo-Saram, are descendants of ethnic Koreans from the Soviet Union, and they primarily reside in Russia, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. In Russia, the Korean population is around 88,000, with 27,000 of them speaking Korean. Most Koreans in Russia live in the city of Vladivostok, near the Russian-North Korean border, while others live in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other large Russian cities. In Uzbekistan, there are 174,000 Koreans, though I could not find specific data on the number who speak Korean. In Kazakhstan, according to the 2021 census, the Korean population is 118,000, with 59,300 of them speaking Korean. Another country with a large Korean population is the United States. Estimates place the Korean population there between 2 million and 2.6 million, although I could not find data on the number of Korean speakers. Other countries with Korean populations over 20,000 include Canada, Australia, Vietnam, Germany, the UK, Brazil, New Zealand, the Philippines, France, Argentina, and Singapore. Korean is written in the Hangul alphabet and is spoken by close to 80 million people. It belongs to the Koreanic language family and has a status of safe. The Jeju language is the traditional language of Jeju Island, located off the southern coast of South Korea. While sometimes considered a dialect of Korean, Jeju is often classified as a distinct language within the Koreanic language family due to its unique grammar, vocabulary, and phonology, making it nearly incomprehensible to speakers of Standard Korean. The Jeju language likely originated from the same linguistic roots as Old Korean, but began to diverge as the island became geographically and culturally isolated. Early on, Jeju was known for its distinct society and governance, including the Tamna Kingdom, which was established around the 1st century CE and lasted until 1404, when it was absorbed into the Korean Joseon dynasty. During the Tamna period, Jeju likely developed its unique linguistic features, although much of its early linguistic history is not well documented. A significant chapter in the history of the Jeju language came during the Mongolian invasions of the 13th century. The Mongol presence in the region influenced the Jeju language, adding Mongolian vocabulary and linguistic features, particularly in areas like animal husbandry and military terms. In Jeju, several words of Mongolic origin can be found, and there are structural and phonetic similarities in some aspects. However, the language remains fundamentally Koreanic in grammar and vocabulary, with Mongolian influences primarily seen in loanwords and expressions rather than core grammar or structure. During the Joseon dynasty between 15th to 19th centuries, Jeju's administration was fully incorporated into the Korean state, which increased the influence of mainland Korean. However, Jeju's geographical isolation allowed it to retain its linguistic uniqueness, with older Korean features persisting in Jeju that had faded on the mainland. Under Japanese occupation, Japanese was enforced as the language of education and governance in Korea, including Jeju. As a result, many Jeju residents became bilingual in Japanese, and some Japanese words were adopted into the Jeju language. This period contributed to the decline of Jeju as younger generations began learning Japanese as their primary language. However, Jeju remained dominant in informal and home settings. After Korea's liberation from Japan, the Republic of Korea instituted Standard Korean as the national language. Efforts to standardize the language and promote national unity led to the decline of regional languages and dialects, including Jeju. The dominance of Standard Korean in education, media, and government contributed to a rapid language shift among younger generations on Jeju, who increasingly saw Standard Korean as necessary for social and economic mobility. Since the 1990s, awareness on Jeju's endangered status has grown. Efforts to preserve Jeju include community initiatives, academic research, and government support for teaching the language in schools. Cultural initiatives on the island, such as folk festivals, digital archiving, and language classes, also play a role in revitalizing Jeju and preserving its unique linguistic heritage. However, challenges remain, as the language is still primarily spoken by the elderly, with fewer young speakers. The revival of Jeju involves not only linguistic efforts but also a cultural push to restore pride in the island's unique traditions and heritage. Jeju is written in the Hangul script and is spoken by between 5,000 to 10,000 people. It belongs to the Koreanic family, and its status is critically endangered. As many of you know, Japanese is the official language of Japan. The exact origins of the Japanese languages are unclear, but early influences likely came from contact with Korea and other nearby regions. The language from which modern Japanese is thought to have evolved is called Proto-Japonic. It is believed that Proto-Japonic speakers migrated to the Japanese archipelago from the Korean peninsula sometime between 1000 and 300 BC. The first written records of Japanese appeared in the 8th century. At that time, the language lacked its own writing system, so kanji characters were borrowed from Chinese to represent Japanese sounds and meanings. The population of Japan is 123.7 million people, almost all of whom speak Japanese. Outside of Japan, the US has the largest Japanese population with around 414,000 people. However, the American Japanese population, which also includes people of full or partial Japanese ancestry, is close to 1.7 million. The exact number of Japanese speakers in the US is hard to pinpoint, but estimates suggest that approximately 400,000 people speak Japanese as a native or secondary language in the country. The next country with a significant Japanese population is China. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Japan, 101,786 Japanese citizens live in China. Again, finding data on how many people speak Japanese in China is tricky. While Japanese citizens living abroad certainly speak the language, it is difficult to know whether second and third generation Japanese individuals or those with partial Japanese ancestry are included in such statistics. Other countries with populations of over 40,000 Japanese speakers include Australia, Thailand, Canada, the UK, Brazil, South Korea, and Germany. Japanese uses a unique writing system with 3 scripts: kanji, hiragana, and katakana. In total, around 130 million people speak Japanese worldwide. It belongs to the Japonic family, and its status is safe. The Yukon languages are a group of endangered languages spoken in the Ryukyu Islands, an archipelago that stretches from Japan's Kyushu Islands southwest toward Taiwan. Part of the broader Japonic language family, the Yukon languages are distinct from Japanese and are not mutually intelligible with it, though they share some linguistic features and a distant common ancestry. The Yukon languages consist of several unique languages divided into 2 main subgroups, Northern and Southern Yukon, each containing different language varieties. It is commonly accepted that there are 6 main Yukon languages, most of which are named after the island on which they are spoken. The Amami language is spoken on Amami Island by around 10,000 people. Miyako is spoken on Miyako Island by around 10,000 people. Yaeyama is spoken on Yaeyama Island by around 7,000 people. Kunigami and Okinawan are spoken on Okinawa Island by around 5,000 and 150,000 people respectively. Yonaguni is spoken by around 400 people on Yonaguni Island, the westernmost inhabited island of Japan. This map might give the impression that the archipelago covers a small area, but it actually spans over 900 kilometers. Each of these languages has multiple dialects which can be quite distinct. Due to the distance between the Yukian-speaking islands, these languages diverged at some point in history, developing independently from each other. Unfortunately, all Yukian languages are endangered, with many spoken primarily by older generations. Efforts are being made to document and preserve them, but the shift to Japanese has had a significant impact on their vitality. A 2012 survey on Okinawa Island revealed that only 80 out of 274 elementary schools and 32 out of 154 high schools include Yukian language classes in their curriculum. UNESCO predicts that if no immediate action is taken, the Yukian languages will go extinct by 2050. Yukian languages use the Japanese script, though some, like Okinawan, have modified versions. They belong to the Japonic language family. The status of the Yukian languages is definitely endangered for Amami, Miyako, Okinawan, and Kunigami, and severely endangered for Yaeyama and Yonaguni.